Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello, you homeschool families out there. Before we begin, I'm going to type into my computer here, Ariel. Hey, ChatGPT, is there a super cool meeting that I can attend to learn about homeschooling?
This is our last plug, you guys.
Bleep, blah, 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 bloop, bloop, bloop.
This is our very last plug for our talk at the library, the Snohomish Library, if you're in Washington. This is on June 21st. This is next Saturday from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Snohomish Library. We're going to be talking all things homeschool, so come on down and see us. And this is the last plug you all have to listen to. So thank you for bearing with us, especially if you live in Wisconsin or I wish I could attend. Guys, stop talking about this event I can't go to. Apologies. But this is our last pitch.
They like our super cool intros. They'll just want us to keep pitching fantasy events. We'll see you on the moon in 2026, guys. Anyway, so let's carry on. We have better voices today, Ariel. We are no longer
a little bit.
We are no longer super ill. We are armed with water just in case. We're going to continue on talking a little AI stuff, and kind of carrying on from what we were talking about last week, where we went into some cool ideas on how to use AI. And if you're thinking about, exposing that to your children and, getting them to begin to use these tools, we had a bunch of ideas last week that I think were really helpful, kind of reimagining, different ways of using the tool, different ways of using the technology. And we've been talking about AI for a while now. It's something that we use extensively in our own personal lives, but also we're starting to let our children use it as well, and really embracing that as like a new tool in our tool belt, right, to enable learning really in a lot of respects, but also with the vision and the sight into the future, knowing these are tools and skills, just like the social skills that we have to do, and handwriting skills and math and computer skills, and how to change a tire and clicking and all those other life skills that we're trying to teach them. This is just another thing that we have to layer in and just be aware of, right? It's not something we have to stress about every single day, contrary to my stump speech from last week. But it is something that's important for us to consider and start to think about when we're starting to plan that. So we're going to carry on today talking about new and other ways to use AI in your everyday life with your children and helping support your education.
Yeah. So the first one we wanted to talk about is role play and character simulation. So this is an awesome opportunity because you can basically tell something like Claude or ChatGPT, hey, I want you to embody this person. Now, it can be a famous person, so I want you to embody Susan B. Anthony. And then your child can actually interview. We talked about all of the voice stuff in the last episode, so you could actually do it as a voice interview if you want to, but otherwise your child could actually interview a famous person from history and ask all the burning questions that they may have, right? You could also have something like ChatGPT embody a character. So let's say you're studying Treasure Island, you could have it embody Long John Silver, and you're a sailor on the crew and you're talking to this character, right? Or it could be something from their own imagination. What if they have come up with this character, and you can have your student write the whole backstory of who this character is that's going to be in their next story. Our daughter's going to be doing creative writing next year. At our parent partnership, and I'm thinking that could be great. She could say, hey, here's this character and this is a super cool girl and here's all the things about her, and then she could ask Chatty to be that person and you can have a conversation. So what a neat way to understand a piece of literature, to figure out how you're going to write a character, to do research for a paper on a historical figure, or really get into, kind of into the mind of that character. Now obviously everything with AI, you have to take...
There's a fictionalized element.
There's a fictionalized element, right.
Do, yeah.
It's a little bit like historical fiction. It's not going to be perfect. You, definitely, if they're going to write a paper, this is a great way to teach them, though, about citing sources. So they could find out all this information that could be really interesting. Oh, this really interesting thread. And you could also ask, ChatGPT now, you can ask it to cite its sources.
You can, yes.
So, it gave you this information. Can you cite where you got that from? And then you can use those sources, if those are from scholarly places, not just like Wikipedia, as the citations in a paper too.
Absolutely.
So, but I think it's a really cool idea. What a great way to bring history alive, books alive. I think it would be awesome. I haven't done this yet, but I'm sure our daughter would love to interview Hermione Granger. So I could think of all kinds of neat things that she would want to do with this, and I think it could be a great opportunity for your homeschool.
Well, especially, something that you've been getting into in the last year or so is fan fiction. And if you have the creative writer who is maybe dabbling in maybe fan fiction as one of their first writing activities, it'll be interesting next year to see where our daughter goes with respect to her creative writing. She has a lot of kind of interests right now. Babysitter's Club is a really hot one for her right now.
Very interested.
Very interested. And she really likes that. And I'm wondering if she might be kind of going that route in what she wants to write and what she wants to write about. But you're right. It absolutely is very interesting. I know we interviewed the woman who ran the Facebook page around AI.
Yeah, Mary McKemmy.
Yeah, last year. And I believe we had a conversation about students at a university level having conversations in a philosophy class with famous philosophers like an Aristotle or Socrates, and they would engage with that because the understanding of those philosophies are fairly well understood. We've always said the things that are most established, like, this is, physics, like Newton's laws and things like that. You can ask a lot of good questions about ChatGPT and they will give you almost always the right answer on established things. But when there starts to become kind of a gray zone of opinion, it becomes a little bit more challenging for it to give you an answer that maybe what you're looking for that's more factual. It may kind of skirt those lines and maybe sometimes even kind of what they always say, hallucinate a little bit and manufacture something. But if you do, like in this example, have a person interview a character or something like that, or if you have a book that's in the public domain, and say like Peter Pan, right? And you load that book into the context window, just copy and paste it if you get it off of Gutenberg, and you go ahead and just paste that right into the context window where you were typing something, load the book in, and then say, I want to have a conversation with Wendy, and talk about the struggle it is to have, unruly younger brothers, and then all of a sudden get the ultimate unruly, younger brother with Peter, and ask her to maybe have an interview with her, sit down interview with her, right? That type of thing.
Or what if you wanted to write fan fiction off of
that,
Peter Pan? And I've been so surprised by fan fiction. Actually, it's something I've never read before, but I love hearing these alternate versions, especially of, stories that, maybe you read a book and it didn't quite end the way you wanted it to, or book series. I wanted a different end. This is a classic like Game of Thrones thing where it didn't end well, right?
It's just never going to happen.
You could get something rewritten. I also love hearing about these side characters. Everyone has those books or shows or whatever where they love a certain character that never gets enough of the spotlight, and you can just have some really interesting, where would this character go and what would they do?
And where do you get your fan fiction? Do you have a
so Archive of Our Own is kind of the main fan fiction
and you can
site.
filter based on age range too.
Yeah, exactly. Content, so you can filter and make sure that it's all safe content for your kids, but there is some really interesting stuff. So it's a great. I've been very surprised about the quality of the writing that I've seen there, and there's been some really fun stuff that I've read. But what if your child wants to do something similar? Maybe you don't make up a whole new world. Maybe you just take an offshoot off of a property that they already really love.
Magic Treehouse fan fiction.
Yeah. As Jack and Annie grow up, become demon hunters.
Yes. Should we talk about the new Demon Hunter thing on Netflix? K-pop. Was it K-pop Demon Hunter?
Was it called K-pop Demon Hunters? I don't remember.
The girls lost
I feel like it was something was focus grouped and they were like, listen, there's these tween girls out there that love K-pop and they love all the, vampire, zombie, demon, high school, whatever thing. And we're just going to put these two things together. Anyway, that was that's an aside. It was pretty funny. We saw it the other day and we're like, who writes this?
They wrote it for our children.
And well, at least our older daughter, she's kind of just getting into like the tween type stuff. She's not quite 10, but
we showed her the trailer tonight for Twilight, and she was like, "What is this?"
And we were like, "No,
this is not for you right now.
You
sweetie.
You can't watch this for many years or read this for many years." But anyway, just kind of funny.
Yeah.
So that could be a really fun. So think about the role play characters,
absolutely.
Especially if they are doing creative writing, and even if they get into a block about what their character would do next, you can have a conversation with that character. So that'd be cool.
Now, we talked a little bit about the custom GPTs last week, and this is something you've been getting into when you're trying to formulate. It's almost like a script or like a routine or something like you want to redo over and over again. You were able to create some custom GPTs to essentially prompt you in the right direction that you want to go. Mm-hmm. I've used other people's custom GPTs. So there's a whole kind of marketplace on ChatGPT where you can download custom GPTs that help guide you in a certain direction. So I have some around building characters for fiction writing and then doing world building. Mm-hmm. And basically it will prompt you with some questions, and you can give it your ideas and then ask you a couple more clarifying questions. And then it can help you flush out based on those prompts. They've done a little prompt engineering for you. And then all of a sudden you can get some outputs that are pretty cool that maybe are more in line with what you're looking for.
And where did you find that? On there's an AI for that?
No, believe it or not, it's just like on a forum on like Reddit or something like that. And someone said, "Oh yeah, use my custom GPT." And all I had to do was just click on it. It loaded right in. It was amazing.
So I know there's a site called There's an AI for that, and they have AIs that are all some things that are paid or whatever, even that run in ChatGPT. But then they do have a lot of custom GPTs on there. Yeah. I remember being really intimidated by custom GPTs, but then once I realized that it was just basically a ChatGPT window, except that you've given it some instructions about every time you start a chat within that custom GPT, you want it to, inhabit a certain thing. You want it to follow a certain set of instructions is basically what it is. Yeah. So it's really not that difficult to make. But one good example, so you were just studying for your praxis exams for your teaching certificate, and you used a bunch of ChatGPT to help you with like flashcards and quizzing you and making practice tests. And one of the things you could do if you made like a custom GPT is you could say, I'm a student studying for the praxis. Every time I come in here, I want you to ask me different questions in these different categories or whatever. And so whenever you start a new conversation, it already knows. Or you could even say, like, I'm studying for the praxis. I feel really good about this section. I need help with these sections. And then every time you go in, you don't have to repeat all of your information.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I used it for is, I'm not a ELA specialist in the least. Math and science and STEM has always been my guiding light. But for me, I something like grammar is always something I'm, coordinating conjunctions and all those things is like, it's so funny that a lot of people talk about math the way I feel about grammar. It's like it's all like voodoo type of stuff.
I can see if it looks wrong when I write it.
I can hear it, but I have no idea what's going on.
I don't know what it's all called.
Yeah, exactly. Like these are words I don't understand. I legit there are like certain types of pronouns that they were talking about. I was like, I have never heard this term before, but I use it all the time, and what I did is I went into ChatGPT and I said, okay, well, here's the content that's going to be on the exam. I said, give me, I went online and said, what are the top 25 or 50 grammar concepts that everyone should know, one of those types of things. And I just started dropping those in and say, hey, give me a quick, concise study notes about a coordinating conjunction with examples that are both correct and wrong, and give me 5 questions at the end. And man, did it produce such really nice study notes. And I went ahead and just copied that into a Google Doc sheet. And I said, okay, do the next one. Here's the next one. Boom. Give it to me. Boom. Great. Put it over here. And I was able to print off like a 20-page resource guide, basically crash course on grammar right from ChatGPT. It took me about 30 minutes or so to put together. And then I printed it off, and I used that to help me like just kind of, just to get the right terms, together with working examples and things to quiz me on. And it was really effective. It was really impressive. And I could imagine you doing this with kind of like a custom GPT that you build for like grammar for your kid, or multiplication tables for math, or, whatever it might be, like a custom GPT for, analyzing a paper with certain things that get pumped out. Here's your topic sentence. Was this what your original topic sentence? Is this your guiding idea? That type of thing. Here were your supporting points. Were these the correct supporting points that were in your notes? We can put these things together to help streamline our educational process, especially as our children get a little bit older, and it starts to get into the realm of, we don't want to be looking over their shoulder all the time, but we need to be able to check their work in more of an efficient manner. This may be, kind of a tool for you to be able to use, especially if they're doing something that routine, like we kind of talked about earlier in the last episode, which is like maybe they're writing an essay every week, or a long paragraph essays every single week on certain topics, or, they're putting together something that's, all the time that you need to analyze. These types of things can help you short circuit that amount of work. Instead of you having to spend an hour to, grade a paper, you can go ahead and like have them analyze it, and then you work together with what's been produced. So
yeah, I like the idea too. I've seen some folks who've done like custom GPTs for your child's individual learning style. So you could have a custom GPT for each of your children that you keep updating the instructions to the GPT, because they're always editable as your child grows. But you can say like, my child needs hands-on activities. They have these interests. These are areas of struggle, whatever it is, right? You can kind of fill out a learning profile, and then you can use it to
like an assistant in some respect,
right? And then you can use it to say, "Hey, I'm trying to put together, a unit study on volcanoes. Can you give me great ideas that are going to align with my child's learning style?"
We do this all the time. And, it could be the Jimmy GPT said, "Hey,
right,
we have to do this. I need to tailor this to what he needs. Here's the current profile of what he likes." Oh, that's really cool. I like that idea.
Yeah, so you can totally do things like that, and then you can keep building. I did a home-based one. I did a custom GPT for meal planning, because our now 6-year-old loves to ask us all the time, "What's for dinner?" And I'm like, I don't know. And so I made a custom GPT where I put in all of the things that we like to eat and all of the preferences kind of our family, and just, kind of broad brushstrokes, not every single thing, but, family favorites and stuff. And then I can go into the GPT anytime and say, "Hey, we really want something light and fresh for dinner, and I have these couple ingredients on hand. Give me some ideas." And it will suggest recipes based on the instructions, which knows these are the types of things we like to eat. And it'll be like, "Oh, well, I know that your daughter likes lasagna, so I'm going to suggest these other things that might, whatever." So I think it's kind of cool. But I love the idea of learning profiles as custom GPTs.
That's a really cool idea. Next one here we have is kind of summaries, building source-specific summaries, and more importantly, the Notebook LM,
which is a Google product.
And
it's free.
I believe we've talked about this in the past, but we'll touch on it again, because I think it's one of the coolest. This happens with Google periodically. A lot of their products tend to be cooked up in some lab. Somebody makes something, and then it catches on and becomes a thing, like Gmail. Like that was like something that just they kind of cooked up, and they made their own email client, and now it's the biggest email client in the world. Somebody cooked up this Notebook LM tool as sort of like a way to use that sits on top of Gemini, and it's a way that is specifically built for students to summarize things, notes, books, articles, papers.
I could see this being so helpful in college or high school, like teaching your kids how to use this so they can go out to when they're at the university and use this would be just like.
Yeah, and so it's basically a way to summarize content, create study guides, create bulleted forms that are simple to understand and read and organize, and then be able to use that to study whatever they're working on. And they even wrapped in this just unbelievable, like it's still shocking, and it's been, I think, over a year since we first started playing with it, which is it will take your summary and build it into a podcast that you can then listen to and then consume. And because we know our learners all have different ways of doing things, I, as a learner, would just die for simple podcasts that I could listen to and walk across campus and study to while I remember at Florida State, I was in the grad dorms, which is on just off Tennessee Street, south, northwest corner of the campus. And I had to go all the way to the southeast corner of the campus. It was a 30-minute walk, just hoofing it. And I was never crossing a street. It was just like one side of the campus to the other. And I used to listen to Feynman's lectures, physics lectures, walking across campus because I was like, I got to kill 30 minutes. I might as well get some physics stuff in my brain, right?
I'm sure all people think that.
Yeah. Well, I was walking to, I don't know, like a humanities class, right? And I would have loved to be listening to a podcast about my humanities class so I can short circuit the studying that I have to do going there. And this is able to do that for you. It's able to produce a podcast that is about 12 to 15 minutes long based on the summarized content that you've just provided it. I did a actual example of this to my writers group. Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises, his masterpiece, was just got into the public domain. So I used it as a working example. I pulled down the copy of Sun Also Rises and went ahead and put that into the context window. And I said, okay, give me, the summary. I want all the characters. I want to, it had Jake and all the famous characters. And I want a plot summary of where they went, what happened in those locations, what were some of the challenges, and then produced a podcast for us. It summarized it. And in the case where I was talking to them, I said, okay, a lot of you guys have 12, 15 books. You want to summarize these books because you're reading book 14 right now, but you forgot what happened in book 3. That's very common. Authors are like, I have no idea what I wrote 4 books ago. Mm-hmm. And now they can go ahead and produce those summaries so that they can go ahead and know, oh yeah, that character did this thing, they fought with that character, and that was the conclusion, right? That type of thing. Mm-hmm. In that case, we can use it there. But in this case, if you're a student and say you're taking an anatomy lesson, and you're just memorizing the bones, you can listen to this talk about a podcast, and you're walking across campus and you're learning the, whatever anatomy you're doing. It's just another way for our children to learn and listen. And for our children love to listen to things. So I could totally see us as an educator, as a parent, to take something, build that into a podcast that's something that's memorable for them, that maybe they can get that piece of information. I don't know how it can apply to multiplication tables, but I'm willing to do that with my oldest.
Well, it's funny, we kept going oh man, we're going to be out of a job. Not that this is a job, but we're going to be out of a gig.
Jobs are things you get paid for. Ariel.
Right, that's right.
We don't get paid for homeschooling.
We do not. So
I do. I get paid in love.
One of the things that I think is really powerful about Notebook LM, there's a couple of things I just wanted to point out about it. One of the things is that it only pulls... And
this is free. Notebook LM is free.
So it only pulls from the information you give it, which is a big piece, right? Because they're always talking about, which we talked on this podcast, even about how ChatGPT can get it wrong. It can hallucinate, and all the AIs can. But giving something to Notebook LM, it only pulls from your source information. So if you've got a textbook or an article or something, it's not going to pull from anywhere else. It's just going to go from that. Mm-hmm. So that's really great because you know that the information is going to be accurate because you've given it all of the info that it's going to summarize. The next thing that I really like about it is that you can make a podcast about the nichiest topic, right? That, whatever your kids are super duper into. Our daughter is into this weird, I don't know, pulling yarn, making mosaic. I don't even know what to call it.
It's a mosaic yarn
thing. It's like a crochet hook thing, whatever.
Thing, yeah.
She is so into it. She would love to sit and listen all about where this came from. I mean, you're never going to find a podcast about this niche craft problem. I mean, maybe you will. I'm sorry. There's probably a whole community of people out there who love the crochet,
they're pounding on
yarn,
the table right now, Aaron.
Mosaic thing, and you're probably going to say this is a huge thing. But I'm just saying.
And there's a proper name, and it's probably Swedish. It's Jarfmargen or something like that.
I don't know. My point is, you've got a kid who is obsessed about a specific type of dinosaur or something. Yeah. You can build this custom podcast just for them. Or, you're talking about a certain time in history. Great. I'm going to put in all the information about this people's, and we're going to listen as we drive all about it. It's such a great way to intake information, and it can be as unique and individual as you want it to be, which I think is great. And we have to always remember with all of these different products, we can always tell at what age we want it to target, which I think is really powerful. So I can tell Gemini or ChatGPT or any of these, hey, I need this summarized for a 9-year-old. And I need this summarized for a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. And it can do 2 versions so that you can get the information at the level you need it. And then with Notebook LM, you can get it in the format you need it, given the audio capability. So I think that's really the tailoring ability of it is, I think, really important.
Yeah. And even, we kind of don't have this in the notes, but I think it's related to this. If you find yourself to be a musical family, you can combine kind of the ChatGPT with like some tool like Suno, Suno, and make songs that are educational. So you could actually
that's really cool.
You can actually have ChatGPT. I was thinking like creating summaries, creating podcasts. You can do the exact same thing and have ChatGPT make you a song around a certain thing.
You only get so many credits. I think
do.
With Suno.
Yeah, Suno's a little bit more challenging because it will require a little bit more pain, but it has a little bit more of a fee structure there. But I don't think it's any more appreciable than like a monthly, $20 or $30 for like ChatGPT. I think it's something comparable there. I'll check on that. I'll put a link into the show notes for that. But you could have ChatGPT, like if you're trying to learn a concept like your colors, or you're trying to learn, for a younger child, or if you have kind of like an older learner, like our oldest, and you're doing kind of a history thing, you can almost imagine, prompting ChatGPT to create a song about American history in the style of Les Mis, and then have Suno go ahead and create me a musical around George Washington directly, competing with Hamilton, over here.
We were just watching clips of Hamilton tonight.
But you can imagine it creating something like that, and then your student then can listen to like almost a whole musical, the 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 songs that you've written using ChatGPT, created the music that is catchy and fun, and they can listen to it and they remember that information because they love listening to songs and they love learning from songs. That's another avenue that you can do. So like kind of a ChatGPT plus a Suno thing, just another way to be creative and tailoring the education to what your children like.
Yeah, I love the idea of doing like a compare against musical, like Hamilton. What things were real? Where was the creative license? You could do that even with movies or things, right? So just showing how art has deviated from actual history, and I don't know, that could be really cool.
Absolutely.
So the last one we wanted to talk about was making smart flashcards and doing adaptive quizzing. So knowing that the AI can create flashcards, which is, we're talking about multiplication right now. Our daughter's struggling to memorize it. But basically you can make adaptive quizzes based on the reading. Now, if something is in the public domain, that's of course easier, but there's a lot of books even that, you can ask it for comprehension questions or give me a quiz, or it can make spelling quizzes for you.
Exactly.
It can adjust you could set up a custom GPT, for example, to do quiz questions about a certain topic, and you could have it be adaptive so that it asks a question, your learner answers, and then if they get it right, they make that question harder, and if they get it wrong, they make the question easier. So you can even set up adaptive quizzing in a program like that, which I think is really, really neat.
Well, we hope, these ideas have given you some, food for thought when you're trying to bridge that gap between how do I use these AI tools and the various tools. And, we just talked about Suno, and while Arial was talking there, I looked it up. It's like $8 a month. So you can make, you can imagine making a bunch of songs for $8 a month and singing along to those. How do I use these tools? Seems kind of scary. It seems, I'm not a tech person. There's a lot of terms. Everything's moving so fast. From our standpoint, if you go with ChatGPT, that's probably the safest way to go. It's super easy. If you're worried a little bit about, I want to use some of the more advanced features, we pay $20 a month for it. It's not that big of a deal. Gemini is free as well. So
I'm happy to support it because I like the ability to upload files to it too, and we do a lot with it. We've been experimenting with the different models, but tell us what you do with it. I mean, these are just some ideas that we're throwing out there. If you've got some great use, please share it on our Facebook group. Join the Facebook group and talk about that. So these were some of our ideas for your homeschool. Next week, we wanted to do one more episode on AI. We want to talk about how you can use something like ChatGPT. We're just going to use that as our example because that's what we use, but obviously it could be Claude or it could be Gemini.
I have a feeling ChatGPT is going to become like the Kleenex of things. Like it's like it's all tissues, but that we just all call it Kleenex, right?
Yeah,
it's like whatever you end up liking to use. Right now, it seems the way it's going. ChatGPT and Gemini are kind of like the vanguard. Grok is really good, but it's kind of off on the side. Claude is really good, but is really, really popular with coders. So if you're trying to do development work, and it's really popular there. But it looks like ChatGPT and Gemini are kind of leading the race right now. There's some smaller tools that are a little bit free, like the DeepSeek stuff, but from the standpoint of just ease of use, most of us have, most people, I think, I don't know the exact number, but it was like 80% of AI users are using ChatGPT. Yeah. And then everybody else is using a combo of like, Gemini and Claude, and then it's just small numbers after that.
So we're going to talk in terms of ChatGPT. Chatty, as Mary McKimmey called it. I really love that. So we're going to talk about Chatty next week and how it can be your personal homeschool planner assistant. We have a whole bunch of great ideas that are all around planning. This is my primary use of it for homeschool.
You've been using it a lot now. For this.
Yeah, you're using it in some of the ways we talked about today. I've been using it mostly in planning, and I know that there's a lot of y'all planners out there. So listen next week because we're going to talk all about ways that you can use it for planning, and it has saved me so much time already and helped me to build more robust plans. So I can't wait to share that all with you. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!